Secretary David Cameron and the Home Secretary James Cleverly all arriving. This is a non-political visit, we're being told, so they will not be continuing their visit. It will not include things like a trip to Number 10 to meet the Prime Minister, but the government is taking part on the stage here in this ceremonial part of the welcome. It has led to a slight pause in election campaigning, possibly as coming as some relief perhaps to all of the parties involved. Here at Horse Guards, the Emperor will inspect the Guard of Honour. It's formed today by the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards and the band of the Welsh Guards. And there we can see Sunak, Cameron and Cleverly arriving a little earlier on. We're going to see a carriage procession as well after this ceremony, with the Emperor and Empress joining the King and Queen and the Prince of Wales in this carriage procession along the Mall to Buckingham Palace, where there'll be a second Guard of Honour formed of the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards. And then they've got lunch at Buckingham Palace, and then later on this afternoon, visit to Westminster Abbey, and then a state banquet this evening. Well, we'll be bringing you more on the state visit by the Emperor and Empress of Japan to London very shortly. That and all the rest of the day's news coming up after this short break.
Guard one. Shoulder. Arms. Guard one. Standards. Ease. Stand. Easy.
It was decided by the Cabinet Office that yes, it should still take place, and so we will see what we usually see, the display of a state visit today. As we can see, Rishi Sunak in the background there talking to David Cameron and James Cleverly. Yes, we have political representation, but there's been very close kind of discussions with the Cabinet Office about how today should play out to make sure that there is no undue influence when it comes to the election campaign ongoing.
Well, indeed, because normally there would be a visit to number 10, wouldn't there? But that has been shelved.
That's right. Basically, all of the big political elements that you would see from any state visit have been completely stripped away. So usually, in this case, the Emperor of Japan would, for example, go to Downing Street to meet one-on-one with the Prime Minister. Usually they would give some kind of speech at the Palace of Westminster in front of representatives from the Commons and the Lords. There'd also be meetings with opposition leaders as well. All of that has been pushed to one side because, as the Palace have kept describing this, it's a pre-election period of sensitivity, which meant that as soon as Rishi Sunak called that election, the Palace put out, which was a rather unusual statement, but they put out this statement saying that they would have to rearrange and postpone certain engagements to make sure that they didn't clash or cause too much attention around the election taking place. But clearly today they have decided that the Japanese state visit can go ahead, and we will see that spectacular display in the centre of London with the troops putting on a wonderful ceremonial display as we see Rishi Sunak and James Cleverly and David Cameron having a more lighter moment, you'd say, over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, you imagine that it'd be nice to get a break from the campaign trail. This afternoon, the Emperor and Empress are going to visit Westminster Abbey, aren't they? They're going to lay a wreath at the grave of the unknown warrior.
Yeah, basically the Emperor and Empress actually flew over on the weekend, and they've already been carrying out a few engagements, kind of more of a private programme. Today is when kind of the elements begin with the royal family. But yeah, this afternoon the Emperor will go to Westminster Abbey. There will also be other engagements over the next few days. But today is very much that moment where we see the royal family play host, and as you've already mentioned, we are waiting for the Emperor and Empress to arrive, but already they've been greeted by the Prince of Wales. Prince William was sent to their hotel to, in essence, go and pick them up, and we will soon see them arriving by car. He has, over the last few years, really been given that role, asked to kind of go and meet those important dignitaries and bring them here on behalf of the King. So we await that moment for those cars to arrive as the King there continuing to have his discussions with others who are there waiting on the dais for the full ceremonial to get underway.
And Rhiannon, I mean, just watching the King standing there for a little while, I'm not sure if this was actually part of what was planned, but he does seem to be perhaps being kept waiting a little bit. I don't know, royal events usually run, to the actual minute, don't they? There's very, very rarely any delay.
Absolutely.
So this is a little bit unusual, would you say?
They do seem to be waiting around for a little longer than you'd anticipate. Maybe London traffic to blame? You suspect that the cars will have a police escort, but there are some things that they can't counter when it comes to getting around the capital. But look, I think for the King, he's used to kind of getting on with this kind of thing. He will be delighted that this visit is going ahead. The royal family fully appreciate how important they are when it comes to these big diplomatic moments. Soft diplomacy, soft power. Some people say, look, does it really work? But whenever I've travelled around the world with members of the royal family, you constantly keep being reminded how it's that royal influence that helps to open doors when it comes to our relationships around the world. And that's, again, what we're going to see today. The foreign ministry, an official from the Japanese Foreign Ministry specifically talked about forging those friendly relations across generations between Japan's imperial family and the British royal family. We know that back in 2015, Prince William went to Japan. So there's already been that link up. And this kind of over the next 24 hours, 48 hours, will again continue to cement those important relationships between the two countries. And while, look, all of the political elements, as much as they can, have been stripped away, do not forget how important this visit is diplomatically, and when it comes to things like trade. That is there in full force today, even though we're being told, look, there's nothing to see here when it comes to political elements.
And you've referred to the Prince of Wales as the one who's meeting them at their hotel and escorting them here. The Princess of Wales not taking part in today's event because of her health. But
yeah,
the Prince of Wales has been out and about quite a lot recently, not least to Taylor Swift at the weekend.
Oh, yes, we have to talk about the spectacular dancing, don't we? He was so enthusiastic. I don't think he'll be doing any of that today. I'm not sure the music quite fits. But no, it's interesting that you mentioned the Princess of Wales, because when she appeared at Trooping the Colour and when they announced that she was going to take part in that, they had suggested that she may appear at some other events kind of in the coming weeks and months. I did wonder whether this might be one that she would feel that she was able to attend, because of the fairly short time frames of how much she'd have to be seen publicly. But it goes to show that she is still taking her time, and I think people understand that when it comes to her recovery. And look, you just have to look at how much attention, how much spotlight was put on her when she attended Trooping the Colour. It must have taken a huge amount of kind of personal effort, really, to have stepped out in front of those cameras. Despite the fact that she was beaming from ear to ear, she was smiling. You can't imagine kind of what it's really like to know that you are going to face that level of attention. But also, I think there's of course been that ongoing comparison between the Princess of Wales and the King. And what the palace keeps saying is, look, everyone's cancer recovery journey is different. You see the King there, and it's actually quite easy to forget that he is still undergoing cancer treatment at the moment. But I think what those closest to him have said is that for him, his work has been so important, and actually getting back to more of a sense of normality actually has probably been really important for him when it comes to his cancer recovery. And he's wanted to feel like he's still kind of continuing on with his role despite his own medical treatment that's going on in the background. As we pan across again to see Rishi Sunak, David Cameron and James Cleverly. And it is worth pointing out that this evening at the state banquet, so that we do have kind of all sides represented, we are going to see Keir Starmer taking part in that state banquet this evening, as you would expect for any state visit like this.
I imagine the lip readers will be having a field day today, Rhiannon, and they'll be really wondering what they're talking about.
And laughing a lot.
Yeah. The King himself, what about his foreign visits? How many of them have had to be curtailed because of his illness in the coming months?
It's a really good question, and actually we haven't been told specifically. I know of at least one that I think was due to take place around now-ish, that I think was due to take place, but was never confirmed. The big one that people are looking forward to at the end of the year is a potential trip to Australia and also Samoa, because of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And that, in a way, is the main reason that would take him that far away, is because it would, in essence, be his first Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting as head of the Commonwealth. The last one that we went to in Rwanda, he was there representing his mother. So yeah, so what we're all looking towards really is potentially a very big trip at the end of the year to Australia, Samoa. There were suggestions potentially New Zealand as well, but none of that has been confirmed yet. And of course, like anything that he's doing at the moment, it's all under doctors' orders. He's having to consult with his doctors as to whether he's able to go or not. We've heard on a number of occasions now his wife, Queen Camilla, saying that actually he's a bit of a nightmare when it comes to being told to stop I'm sorry, I've been distracted by the fact that he seems to be tapping what looks like his watch. Seems
Well,
that...
no, he looked at his watch a short time ago, and I wasn't sure if he was referring to something like a pocket watch. But no, there's certainly an issue with timing, isn't there? I think it's fair to say, judging by the fact that the king has looked at his watch, and there does appear to be some discussion.
Yeah, we certainly seem to be running I'd say about 5 minutes late. So they're still kept waiting. I suspect it's London traffic, don't you, Jane?
I don't know. Well, maybe Prince William showing him his Taylor Swift videos. Maybe they can't get him out of the hotel.
I have to say, usually these meetings at the hotel don't take very long. Certainly the media aren't allowed in there very long. It's what we affectionately call in the trade the grip and grin, a bit of a handshake, a grin for the cameras, and then they kind of get on their way. But it is quite unusual for the king to be kept waiting. And I also know from doing interviews with the king that he doesn't particularly like the hot weather. So I suspect that's probably the bit that he's least happy about, is standing around in the boiling heat, because it is sweltering out there.
And Princess Anne, of course, we will not see her today, although she would have been expected to attend that state banquet this evening.
Yes, after that really shocking news yesterday that she had been, she'd sustained those head injuries and also concussion. They haven't fully confirmed what happened. It seems like she can't exactly remember what happened, but her injuries were consistent with either being head-butted by a horse or by being kicked by a horse, which has meant that, no, she won't be at the state banquet tonight. It also means that all her engagements this week have had to be cancelled, and also a trip to Canada at the end of the week on behalf of the king, that's also had to be cancelled as well. But yeah, she still remains in hospital as we are seeing the cars finally arrive there on Horse Guards Parade. Inside, we will see Prince William and also Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako.
We're going to see Prince William getting out the car first, before the Emperor and the Empress meet the King and Queen on the dais at Horse Guards. So this is the ceremonial welcome part of their state visit. Pared back state visit, as Rhiannon was explaining, because of the fact that we are now in a general election campaign. But this event is pretty similar to other state visits we've seen, the King and Queen formally welcoming the Emperor and Empress at the Royal Pavilion, and now presenting them to various members along the dais. We're going to see a guard of honour giving a royal salute, and we're also going to hear the Japanese national anthem being played. Meeting the Prime Minister there, along with the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary. And Rhiannon, I don't know if you're still with us, on these kind of occasions, do we have translators present? You know, there seems to be a lot of actual conversation happening, or do we know whether Mr. Cleverly speaks Japanese?
Well, I know that members of the royal family...
Excellent English, presumably.
Members of the royal family do certainly speak a number of foreign languages, but I suspect that Japanese is probably not one of them. But yeah, it seems that there was some very warm words and warm conversation had as the Emperor and Empress made their way onto the dais. I think so much has been made over the years of Queen Elizabeth and her remarkable track record when it came to travelling so widely around the world, when it came to the fact that she was so central to building kind of diplomatic relations. But also, I think you have to remember that, yes, while this is only the second state visit for King Charles, he also has this vast experience of being involved in this kind of ceremonial event and knowing what is expected from him when it comes to the Foreign Office organising an event like this. He has travelled so widely, and also, of course, he is deputised for his mother on various state visits around the world. And now, of course, he is the one who must take centre stage when it comes to the meeting, the greeting, making sure that the Emperor and the Empress feel as welcome as possible as they make their way along that line of dignitaries towards the end there. Sir Mark Rowley, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. And so as we've seen them meeting various political figures, and soon we will see the main ceremonial part of this welcome get underway on Horse Guards Parade.
Rhiannon, how long do these events take in the planning?
Well, that in a way is why I think they're probably so reluctant to cancel this again. What often happens is that an invitation is extended to the other country, and then that sometimes takes some time for there to be the kind of return, yes, accept the invitation, and then figure out exactly when is the best time of year for the state visit to take place. Usually it's either at the start of the year or the end of the year. Obviously now we're having this one in the summer, as we see the Emperor standing next to the King, the Queen and the Empress there ready to witness the Guard of Honour.
Guard of Honor. No! Arms! Guard of Honor. Shoulder! Arms!
So that they're the Japanese national anthem, and the Guard of Honour giving a royal salute as well. And now the King and Emperor Naruhito are going to inspect the Guard of Honour. The Guard formed of the 1st Battalion Welsh Guard and the band of the Welsh Guards. Correspondent Rhiannon Mills is still with us. And Rhiannon, you just look at these images, and of course this whole concept of inspecting a Guard of Honour from a country you're visiting, it dates back so many hundreds of years, doesn't it?
It does, and it becomes a very important image, I think, for the visiting country. Seeing there the Emperor Naruhito, the ruler of the chrysanthemum throne, making his way in front of the King, very slowly inspecting the Guard. The King there taking off his top hat. It's obviously very, very hot out there on Horse Guards Parade. And I think the whole point of these visits is all about the image, what this shows about the relationship between the two countries. And while over the next 48 hours we will be told that they have taken away all of the big political elements, the ceremonial has remained, and that in itself is just as important when it comes to maintaining diplomatic relationships, especially when it comes to harder times, when it comes to elements of geopolitical turbulence, when it comes to matters of trade, these visits make a huge difference. I've permanently been told that when it comes to carrying out those kind of royal tours when we follow members of the royal family around, the fact that there is that connection between royal families sometimes, between these countries, can be really, really significant. And that is what we're seeing today as we see the Emperor of Japan and King Charles making their way between the rows of the Guard of Honour formed by the Welsh Guards as we hear the band of the regiment playing.
And you talk about that personal relationship, Rhiannon. On Thursday, the Emperor and Empress are going to make a private visit to St George's Chapel at Windsor to lay a wreath on the tomb of the late Queen. And of course, this visit was initially planned during her reign.
Yeah, I believe that will be the first time that a visiting head of state has specifically made that trip to St George's Chapel. And I think it continues to show the high regard that Queen Elizabeth II continues to be held in right around the world. But that, for example, was a lovely moment there, and I think shows that King Charles over the years has developed his own level of experience when it comes to carrying out these diplomatic moments. They're kind of touching the Emperor on the back, kind of guiding him, saying, right, this is what we do next when it comes to the Guard of Honour. Because if you think for the visiting head of state, it must be a bit of a minefield, knowing exactly what you should and shouldn't do, and how it's all due to play out. No matter how much they are, no doubt, briefed as to how this is all going to work. It was lovely there to see the King, that guiding hand, saying, right, we're now going to make our way back to the dais, because as we can see, everything has to run like clockwork. We're now seeing the carriages being brought forward, which will then transport them up the Mall to Buckingham Palace.
And then on to the palace for lunch, and then the state banquet this evening. And Prince William is going to be attending that tonight as well, isn't he? Of course, despite the fact that he is the president of the Football Association, and there's quite a big match on this evening.
Look, he always puts his royal duties first, but you can't help but think that he's probably slightly miffed that there is this clash this evening, especially after he did travel to Japan to Germany last week for one of the games, which sadly wasn't a fabulous display by England's footballers. So yes, I suspect Prince William, of course, will be there doing his royal duties this evening, but you do wonder whether he'll be kept up to date throughout the banquet on how England are doing.
And we see the King and Emperor Naruhito getting into the first carriage to begin this carriage procession along the Mall to Buckingham Palace. I assume the Queen and his wife, Empress Masako, will be in the carriage behind.
That's right.
And we shall see them head off up the Mall. Are there a lot of people out in the centre of London today, Rhiannon? You're down in Westminster, not many miles, but not very far at all from where this is actually happening.
It's such a busy time of year in central London. I think it's one of those times of year where the tourists literally flock in. So those who have travelled to London this week will certainly have a real treat as they see the ceremonial guard and also the carriages make their way along the Mall. I was actually down at Buckingham Palace yesterday, and as they do for every state visit, as we hear again the Japanese national anthem being played, there were flags, kind of alternate Union flags and Japanese flags along the route down the Mall. The Emperor there, not necessarily that experienced in riding in carriages, it seems. He kind of took a bit of a kind of move back in his seat there as they set off. But what we'll see now is also in the second carriage, you'll see the Queen and the Empress of Japan. I have to say, I was wondering whether she would travel in a carriage or not, because she's actually allergic to horses, which is probably why she's wearing that mask. I had wondered if they would have to alter how exactly she travelled to Buckingham Palace, but that's, of course, that seems to be the way that they're dealing with that. And then in the next semi-state landau, you're going to see the Prince of Wales and His Excellency Mr. Hirofima Nakasone, who's the head of the official suite. So there will be that amazing carriage procession now down the Mall as we hear the national anthem being played.
And Rhiannon on to Buckingham Palace for lunch, and then His Majesty is going to invite the Emperor and Empress to view a special exhibition in the picture gallery of items from the royal collection relating to Japan.
Again, this is one of the kind of formal fixtures that we see of any state visit, and has to be said, it's probably a real treat for those who look after the Royal Archive to be able to delve deep into all of the fabulous artefacts that they have within that collection. And later on today, we will find out exactly what they've decided to show the Emperor and the Empress of Japan. They also, of course, exchange gifts. So again, we wait to find out exactly what we've decided to give to the Japanese and what they have decided to give to the King and Queen as we see that spectacular sight in the boiling heat heading down the Mall.
You can really see the heat shimmering, can't you, off the ground. Rhiannon, what happens to these royal gifts?
So most of them make their way back into the archives, but I think it depends on how personal they are. For example, sometimes books are given, and we know that the King is certainly a prolific reader, and certainly the Queen as well. So it's really difficult to know, but we wait to see exactly what's going to be given. But yeah, that is why they have this remarkable archive, which they are able to draw upon when it comes to making the visitor, so the visiting country, the visiting dignitary, feel special, feel that a real effort's been made to find things that may be of interest, and also in a subtle way remind everybody of how long relationships have been built up for, and the importance of maintaining those friendships and relationships. It has to be said also, there have been state visits over the years that have been, in a way, more controversial than this one, and probably attracted a bit more attention than this one, because, for example, the Chinese state visit, there was enormous controversy around that. So as well as the crowds coming out to just watch the spectacle, there were also protesters as well. But of course, this does not come with the same level of sensitivity. But the sensitivity this time is the fact that it's taking place within the period of general election campaigning. And that, I think, has been probably the big priority for both the government and for the Cabinet Office and for the Palace, to make sure that they still have the spectacle of a state visit, but in some ways that it doesn't attract any undue attention at the time where, of course, they want us to be focusing on the election campaigning that continues, albeit with Rishi Sunak still central to the events today, and also this evening, Keir Starmer going to be at that state banquet.
These really are fantastic images, aren't they, Rhiannon? We can see Admiralty Arch there in the background, the Japanese and the Union flags hanging on either side of the Mall. And there are quite a few crowds that have come out today to see this. It's quite a spectacle if you just happen to be in London today, just happen to be in the area, and all of a sudden you see this coming down the Mall towards you. All of the military in their full ceremonial gear.
It is, and look, every day, whenever I'm around Buckingham Palace, you will see crowds in their hundreds, thousands turning out for what in essence is a very simple guard change, because they want to see this kind of level of ceremonial that only our country can put on display. But also watching this, it sort of reminds you of just what a busy time it is for those ceremonial troops who are literally drilled permanently when it comes to making sure that this is as spectacular display as possible. They rehearse so hard. Of course, in recent weeks, we saw that the horses who were spooked by some of the building works, and that again brought to our attention the fact that the horses every day have to be ridden and trained very specifically to kind of take part in something like this in the middle of central London with all of the noise and everything else that's going on, to make sure today, for example, that the Emperor and the Empress have as comfortable a journey up to Buckingham Palace as possible. But it's been such a busy time for the ceremonial troops as well. If you think just over a week ago, we had Trooping the Colour in the, what has to be said, horrible weather. We've also had the Garter ceremony, the Japanese emperor there waving at the crowds as we can hear cheers and flags being waved by some very excitable people in the crowd there. So yeah, it's been a really busy time for them. Summer always is, but I think for the royal family, of course, this sort of pageantry is so important when it comes to these big diplomatic events, and giving the visiting host, giving the visitor kind of those picture moments that they want to go back to Japan with. These pictures will be beamed all around the world. It's a really important moment for cementing relationships.
And in terms of the fact that the summer is now fast approaching, it's starting to suddenly feel like summer, isn't it, now that the sun is out? The Queen traditionally took a long break every year in Balmoral. Will the King follow the same pattern?
I don't think he'll be spending as much time in Balmoral, because actually Balmoral is being open to the public for July, which certainly didn't happen in the past. Yes, people could walk around the grounds outside, but this time people are going to be able to go inside of Balmoral Castle, which is a rarity. But certainly I suspect that the King will probably spend some time up in Scotland. But this is a really busy time of year, traditionally, anyway. So, yeah, the likes of Trooping, Garter, any inward state visits like this one. But I think people will hope, I certainly think that the Queen will hope, that the King will take a kind of longer break over the summer period. As you see him there taking part in this ceremonial welcome, you have to remind yourself that he is still undergoing cancer treatment and has certainly been very busy since doctors gave him the green light to return to public duties. So I suspect a bit of a break over the summer would be no bad thing.
And of course, also receiving treatment for cancer, the Princess of Wales, who potentially would have been involved in this state visit. Was she not also receiving treatment?
Absolutely, and look, you have to remember, look at the attention that she attracted at Trooping the Colour, and any time that she sort of helps when it comes to the state visits and takes part in a state visit, she is often one of those who is centre of attention. People often want to know what she's going to wear to the state banquet, what tiara she's going to have on. It hasn't been confirmed whether or not she will be at the state banquet. I would hedge my bets that possibly not, because she's not taken part in this element of the daytime events, and also it is a fairly late evening. But ultimately that's what they were saying when she returned for Trooping the Colour. There may be certain events that she wants to return for, but in the end it will be up to her and the doctors to decide what it is wise for her to do. She's talked about still having treatment, just like the King. She's also talked about not being out of the woods quite yet. So I think certainly for the photographers, they are going to have to wait maybe a little bit longer before they see her once again out on public duties, as we see the guard there forming inside Buckingham Palace as the Emperor and the Empress arrive at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, this is the second guard of honour that the Emperor will inspect, also formed by the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards inside Buckingham Palace. Now away from the crowds, but we luckily can see it just as they go through the gates of Buckingham Palace and into the palace itself. Let's just show you the images that we haven't seen actually yet. They're from a little bit earlier today. This is where Prince William went to the Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako's hotel to meet them before they embarked on their journey to Horse Guards. A traditional part of the royal visit. They arrived privately on Saturday, met by the ambassador of Japan, and they had various private engagements over the weekend, including visited Japan House and also the Thames Barrier. But it was His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales who greeted the Emperor and Empress at their hotel on behalf of the King a little earlier this morning. And Rhiannon, of these royal visits, is it essentially just today? Today is the day that they really do all of the royal events, and the days around it are not spent with the royal family?
So it depends from visit to visit, but there are other royal elements over the next coming days. So, for example, and I'm just bringing up my list now so that I get it just right for you. Tomorrow evening, for example, the Duke of Edinburgh is going to join the Emperor for an evening banquet at the Guildhall in the City of London. But apart from that, the Emperor is carrying out more kind of solo visits. And then on Thursday, the King and Queen will bid the formal farewell to the Emperor and Empress of Japan. So it really depends on the programme that's organised. But certainly with this one, it appears that today is the big kind of engagement when it comes to the British royal family, albeit with the Duke of Edinburgh tomorrow, also at another important banquet with the Japanese Emperor as well. But these were the pictures that we saw earlier as the King was taking the Emperor to inspect the guard there on Horse Guards Parade. A hand on his back there to help guide him in terms of what he had to do when it comes to this important ceremonial moment. And you can see that the two men there having a chat. You can't forget how experienced King Charles is when it comes to these ceremonial moments. As heir to the throne, he watched on for many, and now as monarch, he steps up and takes that central role when it comes to meeting the important guest of the day, the Emperor of Japan.
Rhiannon, thanks very much for that. We shall leave them there, allow them to get on with their lunch inside Buckingham Palace. Thanks for taking us through it all. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, driving tests are delayed by over 5